name is Jamie Martin, and I was the founder of Injini, which is the first education technology dedicated incubator on the African continent. And now I am the founder and CEO of English Direct, which looks to bring live online English lessons to the mass market in Asia.
Jamie, well, it's a treat to have you be part of our Voices interviews and to be able to talk more about your work with Ingenie. And we're really excited to hear about English Direct as well.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. We had met, virtually and otherwise over the last few years. And this is just a great opportunity for us to benefit from your experience and wisdom in this area to share it with some of our community. So thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it, Jamie.
Oh, thank you. It's very kind of you to invite me.
Pleasure. So I'm just curious, can you tell us a little bit about your personal and professional background that led to where you are now? And I know that could be a long, long, long answer to me as well. But I think really it's just helpful for people to hear about some of the milestones in your career that led where you are now. And then we could get a little bit more in depth about Ingenie and English Direct, but would love to hear about a little bit about your personal and professional background.
Yeah, wonderful. So my background, so I grew up in the UK. I'm from London, was born in the city and grew up there. And having been to university, I began working in sort of public policy after university. And I went straight into education policy. And I think it immediately grabbed me as the most interesting area to work in. Because I guess I'd seen through my own life the way that certain people got great education opportunities, and that opened up the world to all these incredible things. And I think two types of things, right? I think a lot we talk about the way that education opens up professional opportunities, study opportunities, whatever it might be. But I think the other side that I've always really stressed is that education is not just about social mobility or what you might achieve in life. It is also about people being given the chance to appreciate, the best that has been thought, written, and discovered. And that's always been incredibly important to me. Like, I get so much joy out of literature or art or science, and the idea of someone who would appreciate those things not being given access to them because of education is heartbreaking for me. So there's always been a very important motivation, as well as the kind of more obvious social mobility angle.
So can you tell us a little bit more when you talk about the investments that you've made? What does that look like, Jamie? How long is the relationship with your individual grantees? Do you have specific themes in the area of EdTech that you are looking for innovations in? Just if you could tell us a little bit more about how you identify your cohort.
No, absolutely. So Ingenie has always been open to anyone who is based on the African continent. So you have to be solving African education problems. We support expat entrepreneurs and local entrepreneurs, but I think every team that Ingenie has ever founded has had an African founder or co-founder, and all the companies have been based on the African continent. And we look at all stages of education. So we have incubated companies who do early stage childhood development, and we have incubated people who concentrate on adult learning and everything in between, K-12, universities, everything. So we look at all education problems. And in terms of what does that investment look like? So if somebody qualifies for our program, so typically Ingenie would pick a cohort of 8 companies, though it can vary slightly. About every 6 or 7 months, we pick a cohort. And then we will have a 6-month relationship with those companies. And assuming that the companies come onto the program and perform well and hit milestones, Ingenie will make a cash investment in that company. It varies slightly by cohort, and it also varies in US dollars because the rand, which is what we invested, is a very volatile currency. But roughly speaking, an Ingenie grant or investment would be $40,000 US, give or take a bit of fluctuation in the rand. And that really is a check size which is meant to kickstart, somebody who has a great idea, but maybe can't afford to quit a job or can't afford to hire anyone else to work on it. The idea is that $40,000 allows you to kickstart your innovation. And things have been a little bit different in the last cohort for obvious reasons in 2020, but previously Ingenie flew the teams to Cape Town in South Africa, which is really the technology center of South Africa. And then we ran a program where we gave the teams in-person support here in South Africa and tried to help them grow their organizations.
So Jamie, just in terms of you mentioned the expats and the relationship with entrepreneurs from the African continent. Is Ingenie solely investing in EdTech startups with African founders?
Yeah, so we've never invested in a purely expat business. I'm not saying we necessarily wouldn't do. I mean, I think that, you know, our goal is to improve education on the African continent via entrepreneurship and technology. So if two American ladies or British guys or whatever rolled up into the Democratic Republic of Congo and had a brilliant idea that would stand out, we would back it. I mean, our aim is to support the end users, but I think what we found is that there is just no shortage of brilliant entrepreneurs on the African continent. And obviously, you know, they're more likely to be here, they're more likely to be working on African problems. I think if you have grown up in an economy and in a society, you are more likely to have ideas that, you know, will support that. And that was very much, you know, one of the reasons I started an incubator program rather than say my own product, was I was thinking, well, if you're trying to improve education in Nigeria, should it be me that comes up with the idea, or should it be a, you know, lady that grew up in Nigeria? I mean, she's probably going to know better. Right? So I was like, what can I bring to this? I can probably bring, you know, some expertise on education, some time, you know, company like Boston Consulting Group, business support. I can probably get access to capital more easily than they can. But in terms of actually coming up with the ideas, especially at that stage, I felt like, you know, they were better placed than me. And that's why we've tended to back local entrepreneurs.
All right, so Jamie, thanks for describing sort of the nature of the ecosystem you're supporting. Could you pull out maybe one or two examples specifically of companies you've supported and tell us what they do?
No problem. Yeah. So one of the companies we were sort of most excited about when we discovered them at Ingenie was a company called Slate Cube. So they're based in Nigeria. Two young Nigerian founders. They're actually brothers, Chris and Emerald. And they are building a platform. They have built a platform. It's very much an active company these days. They built a platform where young Nigerians and now South Africans as well, because they're in South Africa, can access online training in digital skills, which are very relevant to obviously the modern economy and ever more relevant after COVID-19. So they, for example, people can learn to code, they can learn to be data scientists, they can learn skills like digital marketing and digital communications. And the idea then is that employers will then use Slate Cube in one of two ways. They'll either use it to upskill their own people, or they will use it to filter prospective hires. So they'll say, hey, if you can take this course and pass this exam, you could well be a hire. And you know, I mean, they've worked with JP Morgan, Weber Wenzel, who's one of the biggest law firms in South Africa here. So, you know, they are, and that's a brilliant example, I think, of innovation, right? Innovation, yes, because it's online skills, but innovation because they're like, okay, there's a bunch of people out there, JP Morgan, with a lot of money who want to hire people. Right. And then there are young Nigerians who maybe can't afford to access this kind of skills training, but can do if, you know, it's free and then there's a job at the end of it. So it's a great business model. And I think that it's one of the key things with online is it's not just the fact it's often free or very affordable. It's also that it allows people from across the country to access these courses. Because if you imagine previously, great, if you're in Lagos, there was probably a skills center where you could go. Right. But let's say you're in the north of Nigeria, which is a very poor region of the continent. There was nothing for you to access things like this. And obviously now, especially as more and more people come online, it makes it much more accessible.
Before shifting over to sort of macro and then hearing about your new endeavor, just one last question about Injini. So you've just mentioned in terms of the penetration and maybe an upside, notwithstanding of all the challenges with COVID-19, is more interest to online access, to be able to access educational material resources, like you said. But there's still vast parts of Africa that, of course, don't have the same level of penetration and may not for quite some time. How do you sort of balance your portfolio investment with those that are sort of low tech versus high tech in terms of the clients being able to access educational content or other services? Is that also part of your decision making?
Definitely. So I can give, and I'll take the opportunity to give a shout out to 2 or 3 other companies here as well who I think deserve it. So I can give you some good examples. So we absolutely strive for a balance. So another example of a great Injini company is a company called Shule. It's a Kenyan company. It means mobile school in Swahili. Great example actually of a local founder with an expat founder combo. And they were the first adaptive learning program that worked by SMS on the continent. Right, so SMS technology, you're absolutely recognizing that most people will not have, this was back in 2016, will not have a smartphone, will not have an internet connection. Can people learn by SMS? And actually during COVID, they have been working with people to deliver health instructions by text message. Because if you imagine how much all of us, right, have been getting our COVID-19 information online, while Kenyans have been getting it by text message, thanks to Mshule and some of the organizations they're working with. Another great example of that is a South African company called Sia Funda. And Sia Funda, they originally were looking to get high quality learning material into schools which were in rural areas. So particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, where the founders Ingenie is from. And they were looking to use both, some of their material wasn't even video, it was audio. Right, because people, and they would put internet connectivity boxes in the schools because the schools didn't have internet, and then knowing that the capability of usage and cost of usage would be difficult, then had some audio only material, and they've expanded that out not just to math and science, which was their original thing, but to teacher training, to digital skills. An incredible example of like low tech reach. And then absolutely, the African continent has a variety of situations. And another great Injini company is a company called Lightbulb Education, who are South African as well. Now they are taking advantage of increasing connectivity, have just partnered with Telkom, one of the biggest mobile operators on the continent, to roll out a learning platform for high school students in South Africa. Now, though that is targeted at students who do have a mobile phone, data connection, et cetera, which, as we well know, is more and more and more of the continent. So I think those three companies are a good example of where Ingenie absolutely sort of branched the fact that on one hand, you have got people on the continent with good quality connections and devices, and on the other hand, you do have people who need more basic technology to reach them.
That seems like it'd be a perfect segue to hear about your new endeavor for English Direct. So please tell us about that.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think I came to the view after sort of 3.5 years of doing Ingenie that I had taken it as full-time CEO. I'm still very much involved as a director, but as full-time CEO, I'd taken it as far as I could take it. And it shouldn't be about one person. It should be a much bigger organization, not just about one person. And so I stepped aside and decided to sort of look at doing my own product, and what I ended up launching is something called English Direct. So it really looks at the fact that globally, but particularly in Asia, high quality spoken English is the gateway to opportunities. So in India, which is our main market, fluent English has an earnings premium of 35%. So somebody with the same skill set will earn 35% more if they speak fluent English. It is the entry point to the country's best universities. It is the entry point to the country's best jobs. Even lots of digital skills courses won't let you in if you don't speak English. And this is a statistic I think that's going to shock a lot of people watching this. 4% of Indians speak fluent English. 4. So the country's biggest opportunities are shut off to 96% of people. And probably only a further 16% speak some level of the language. So they wouldn't speak it well enough to access the best opportunities, but they would speak, kind of very broken sort of language. Now, the great thing about learning a language is that anyone can do it. I mean, there is no, I probably couldn't have got a PhD from MIT in physics. Unfortunately, I'm just not smart enough. But I could, if I was in Kenya for long enough and put my mind to it, I could learn Swahili. Right? And it's the same. There's no reason that anyone in India can't learn to speak fluent English. And the same challenges that exist in India exist in Indonesia, in Vietnam. I mean, English is more pronounced in India, but it's important across these countries. And the challenge, unfortunately, is that many people will attend English lessons for years and not be able to speak fluently, because speaking is particularly important. It's particularly difficult. And what we have done is looked to be the first international organization that targets the mass market. So normally what happens is, there's Duolingos, there's lots of international organizations, but most of the paid plans with those organizations will be way out of the reach of the mass market, somewhere like India or Indonesia. So we deliver live online lessons for under $1 a lesson. That's our big promise. You can access lessons for under $1 a lesson. So by combining our live lessons in our app, for example, you could be taking, say, 12 lessons a month for the cost of about $10, and your app access, which is less than $1 a month. So, and you could then be boosting your salary by 35%. Right, so it will pay off very, very quickly. Or if you're investing it for your children, it will pay off in the future. And so we began delivering live lessons in May in India. We've now delivered over 1,000 live online lessons. We're doing a variety of super interesting products. I mean, our sort of core is that we teach young adults how to speak English to improve their employability. But we have also done some fascinating projects. One I would pick out is that with a foundation who work in rural Gujarat, we are teaching their teachers English so that they can then go into villages and teach English offline. Because you genuinely have the situation in these villages where simply nobody speaks English. So how can anyone teach anyone English? So we are teaching the teachers to then go into the villages. And of course, when they go into the villages, they're going to use our curriculum because we're training them at the same time we're actually teaching them, which is fantastic. And it's that kind of, teach a man to fish kind of impact, which we're really excited about. So yeah, it's early days with English Direct, and we'll see how it goes. But I think that's what I would like to see a lot more of. I'd like to see a lot more international organizations as well as local organizations. Instead of saying, well, the elite is the most profitable market, that's where the innovation should be. I would say take a social enterprise lens on it. Think about where the most impact will be. And I promise you, there are profitable businesses to be had. These don't have to be charities. I mean, when you think that there are 4%, 96% of India are able and willing to learn English, and that is an over 1 billion person market, you start to realize that whatever you're charging, there's a very big business to be built. And so I think there could be some, you talked about the next 10 years of EdTech. I think there could be some really exciting EdTech innovations which are aimed squarely at the mass market in countries like India.
Jamie, that's great. And it also comes a little bit full circle from where we started the conversation about general interest in education, but more about just passing on the goodwills, providing access, and then even coming back to the importance of English as a gateway for business and education as well. So we will be happy when we put the interview to put any URL links that you'd like us to have to your work with English Direct. And just want to thank you, Jamie, for taking the time today as part of this interview. You planted lots of seeds of ideas that I hope our viewers will want to follow up with, and really appreciate the opportunity to reconnect with your great work as well. So I wanted to thank you.
That's so kind. Well, no, thank you so much for the opportunity. And if there's anything else I can do for you guys, what you're doing is brilliant. So please let me know how I can help.